I just saw you had your hat on, and I'm like, I need to put my hat on too. Even though I like, look, my toddler drew all over it. So I'm just like, okay, we're going there. But anyways, I had to put it on real quick. So hi.
Hi. Well, I just kind of like took a guess and thought maybe you would, but it just feels perfect. So why not?
Yes, I mean, when else are we going to wear our Lucky River Ranch hat except like on a live stream about Lucky River Ranch? So I love it. Thank you for bringing the cowgirl vibes.
Well, hello, Happy New
Hi,
Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Can you believe that it's 2025?
No, I don't. No, I
Me
don't know.
neither. Me neither. And I keep, it's like that old meme where it's like, what day is it? Where are we? What are we doing? Like this weird in between time. But I'm just like, I flipped my planner today to January and I'm like, am I ready for this? I don't know if I'm ready for this. Like, but it's happening. So whatever.
I know. I'm still in that weird like I'm technically back to work, but I don't really want to accomplish anything yet. So it's like all in the back burner.
Exactly. Exactly. And like, you don't want to like send too many emails to like start things. You're just like, I really just kind of want to coast into next week. And I think next week, at least I feel like I'll be ready to like get back into a routine and just like, have, a bit of normalcy. But in the meantime, it is kind of nice just to like, I don't know, just, be on holiday. Um,
Yep.
so
I told my husband, I was like, look, my to-do lists are just piling up. So I'm going to be extra, like, just psychotic next week, but it's worth it to enjoy right now. So,
you are not the only one. Literally, so I added like a second bookshelf to my office up here because I needed the space. And it's kind of like, okay, well then I had to clean off this first bookshelf and the movers came and moved everything up here. And it's kind of like, okay, now I have to rearrange my whole office. I have to rearrange all my books and like add that to the to-do list. Speaking of the incredible to-do list. So I get it, but I feel like, January, you kind of hit the ground running and you're ready to be productive. And then, that's why when we hit December, we're all limping to the finish line. So,
exactly.
yes,
Exactly. Well said. Well, okay. So we are talking about Wyatt tonight, which
yes.
I don't own Wyatt yet. So I have cash.
I honestly, Sky, to be honest with you, I just got my shipment of paperbacks a couple days ago. So you are not the only one who, is a little late to get their copy of Wyatt. But yes, he is beautiful in person. You have the special edition of Cash, which I absolutely love, with the gold foil and everything. Oh, isn't it so pretty? I have to say, it's just so, so
It's
pretty.
like, I think my favorite special edition. Like, it is
Really? Oh, well, thank you for saying that.
it's just beautiful. Are we gonna get one for Wyatt?
Yeah, do you want me to give you, just kidding. I don't know where the sneak peek of the sorry to tease you guys. The sneak peek of Wyatt is around here somewhere, except I don't know where. So never mind. But yes, we are going to do a special edition for Wyatt, to be honest with you. Cash was the first special edition I've ever done. I had no idea what to expect. We opened my signed paperback store and I'm like, all right, I have like, 100 of them, surely that will, I've never sold out before, and in 2 hours it was sold out. So it's been the best surprise, but I'm just kind of learning, okay, now there's this demand, and if we're going to do one for Cash, then we obviously need one for Wyatt. Do we need to do a special edition for every book in the series? Probably. But it's just really fun, and it's been a wonderful surprise, just how into the special editions people are. And as a reader myself, going to signings, I'm like, I get it. Like the Cast Special Edition, I remember distinctly seeing Morgan Elizabeth, one of her books. It had like roses on the front and it had the gold foil and it was just so strikingly beautiful. And I went up to her and I'm like, who did your special edition? And it, found the gal's name. And so she did Cash and it turned out just exactly how I wanted it.
Well, I also like I love special editions, but I have, especially the second half of the year last year, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to really just only buy a special edition if I don't already have a copy or if I just really, really loved the book, which I really love Cash. So it was a
Well, thank you
no-brainer.
so much. I really appreciate it. But yeah, same, like, again, you only have so much space, right? And so it's like I get that in like my imagination, I'm like, I want every book that I've ever loved. I want a copy of it. So like when my girls or my sister comes to my house, she can browse and I could like guide her to, just some of the best books I've ever read. But it does like, you do have to kind of get selective. So I'm very honored. Thank you, Sky.
Well, I was also going to say, though, even if I hadn't read it or if I maybe didn't love it as much, this is still so beautiful that I would have absolutely bought it.
Oh, well, thank you. That's also it's an awesome compliment. Really for the cover designer. But yes, and just I'm doing a bunch of signings this year. So we're like, let's do something special for the signings. And, I think people are going to be really excited to have these special editions just because they are so pretty and they're just beautiful trophies on your shelf, which I would show to you, except my shelves are currently empty. So never mind.
That's okay. Um, well, also, I wanted to say real quick, you're my first repeat interview.
Really? Oh, well, thank you for having me. I really love doing these things. I think it's just such a great way to meet people. And just to like, I love talking about books. The introvert in me doesn't love small talk, but I love talking about ideas and what are books except like a compilation of ideas. And so, yeah, it's really just such a treat. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, I'm so glad. And you were here last January. So I was like, maybe this should just be a January
Last
thing for us.
January. Isn't that crazy? Doesn't it seem so long ago, like a different lifetime?
Well, we were
Like,
talking about a completely different series and now here we are.
and now
So it is.
here we are in our cowboy era, which I have to say, like entering the cowboy era, I had really brainstormed this concept with my publicist because I started writing small town Southern romance, and my publicist Nina's like, we need to write cowboys. Like, you need to write cowboys. This is like right up your alley. It's so perfect for you. And I'm like, we do need to write cowboys. But we knew that they were really hot. Thank you, Elsie Silver and Kevin Costner. But we had no idea how hot they would be. And it just turned out to be like the best surprise of my career. And really just like the best releases and the best sellers. So it's really been awesome. Thank you for having me back to go from like the beach to the ranch, I guess.
Well, I was definitely going to ask where the inspiration came from because this is your first Cowboy series and
Yes.
we're talking about Wyatt, but let's talk about the series too. So like where did it come from?
Sure. So really, we wanted to be very intentional about constructing this series to be marketable. Before, I feel like I had kind of written from the hip in a way, like to use a cowboy, to use a cowboy, euphemism. I don't know if it's even a euphemism, but a saying. And I kind of just like wrote by the seat of my pants. I never really plotted out my series. And, working with my publicist, she's so brilliant in terms of thinking, okay, romance readers love a series. They love a small town. They love to follow a family. In true, romance tradition, we're going to have a family of five brothers because obviously that's, in every small town, there's a family of five brothers and they're going to be all cowboys. But let's think of like a great elevator pitch, like a one liner where you get the gist of the story. And we came up with this idea of like Schitt's Creek, which I absolutely love, meets Yellowstone, which I also really love. So it was kind of like we wanted this fish out of water. This city gal inherits a ranch in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and she has to kind of go work there, to access her inheritance, and she has to, work with the grumpy foreman who it's just like a 6'3" blue-eyed cowboy, casually. Yes, Cash. And so anyways, we, after Cash, like this is going to be a 5-book series, and we essentially decided a trope for every book. But beyond that, we really did not plot. Like I am not an outliner. I definitely, write by the seat of my pants. Otherwise I get bored. And my books are very like character driven. So I have to figure out who the characters are, and that determines the plot. So yeah, so that was kind of how Lucky River Ranch was born. And I have to say, I'm having like the best time writing these cowboys. It's really been a wonderful
So
experience.
what has the like research been for you because you haven't written it before. So what have you done?
Great question. And when, my publicist first pitched this idea of cowboys, I'm like, I don't know if I can, like I have never, I've ridden a horse 2 or 3 times in my life, but I've never like been on a ranch. I have never, I've been to Texas for like bachelorette parties, but I haven't, like been to rural Texas, on a ranch there. I've never been to the rodeo. I'm not at all involved in this culture. So essentially, like the research involved me kind of reaching out to people who knew a little bit, even, something like how to ride a horse, the terms of that. Like, you don't saddle up a horse, you tack up, and then you untack. And so just little things like that. I also will say I took a deep dive into cowboy romances and, a Lila Sage and Elsie Silver, a Paisley Hope, like you are just going to get all of this juicy information just from reading those books. Sorry. Just from reading those books and, just absorbing the lingo and just how the day goes. Cowboys start their day very early. I will say, I do love the Pioneer Woman, who she's, if you guys don't know, she is, a gal on the Food Network who has her own cooking show, and she lives on a ranch in Oklahoma. And so it's kind of like, all right, I knew cowboys started their day early. I knew, ranches very remote, isolated, but I really did have to do a deep dive into a typical day would look like, what the seasons look like, especially like a ranch in Texas has a much different schedule than a ranch in Wyoming, like a Yellowstone type ranch. So it did take a lot of research, but it was fun research. Like I really enjoyed, doing that deep dive, and it also allowed me to create this like just picturesque small town in the middle of hill country Texas. And we got the country music, we got the good food, we got the cowboy hats, we got the chaps, and it's such a fun little corner of the romance universe to be writing in.
Someone said they couldn't do it because the 4 a.m. wake up calls. That's what I think
Girl,
too. I'm always just like, it's
yes.
like so dreamy, but you can't get me awake at 4 a.m. I won't do
I
it.
mean, I'm with you, and this is why we read cowboy romance, because we can experience the beauty of life on a ranch and that sense of community, but we don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. and like be on horseback when it is 0 degrees outside and it's pitch dark, and it's just going to be a long day. So yeah, so it's kind of like we get to experience the good parts and kind of like pretend the not so good parts perhaps don't exist. So
Well, like I believe many people, 2024 was my first year really getting into cowboy romance.
mhm.
And I did have the opportunity to speak with Lila Sage at the end of last
How
year. And
cool. Like
she's
just oh.
she's so sweet. One of the questions I did ask her though was like, how do you connect with so many readers that don't have any of this ranch experience?
Great question.
And one of the things that I've kind of been thinking through, and I would like to see if you kind of feel the same way about this, is it's similar to the sense of like a fantasy where we don't have any experience
Yes.
with this, but we are just having so much fun. And I think like just giving ourselves permission to relate and like enjoy something that's totally different than what we're used to. It's been such a
Oh,
blast.
oh, it's been such a blast. And I think the escape improves the reality, right? I think romance gets knocked a lot for being escapist literature, and I'm kind of like, well, but what if the escape improves the reality, right? So, I mean, it just kind of like allows us to experience not only a whole new lifestyle, a world where, I sit in front of a computer all day by myself in my office. And one of the things that appealed to me about writing cowboys and writing ranch life was the communal nature of it. Just like there are always people around, you're working together, you're part of a community. There's a sense of connectivity that I think, we're a lot of us are missing in our, daily lives. And so, in the same vein, it's kind of like, okay, you get to experience that, but then you also get to have like empathy for characters like going through things that you haven't necessarily gone through, but I think all of us have experienced grief. All of us have experienced disappointment, embarrassment, whatever it may be. And it's it like escaping into a different world. It's an escape, but it also makes you feel seen. There's like a comfort in it. Um, and just like I compare like small town romance a lot to romantasy in that, I bring up Lucy Score often, but like her Knock 'em Out Virginia series, for instance, she created this whole community from scratch with its own rules, own characters, own history. Like she is very well versed in this world. And I think, romantasy is the same thing. You are building, a world of dragons where you have to go to Basgiath College and you have to go over the bridge to get there. And, there's just all of these rules that are foreign to us and yet they're very thrilling. And so I think cowboy romance, small town romance kind of like feeds that same desire in us to um escape, but also just like experience a whole different world and a whole different like universe with its own rules and characters. And it's just so fun. Like you said, it's just a blast, really.
Yes, I don't want the cowboy era to end anytime soon. Let's
I
all just
don't think they will. And I think it's really interesting, the Yellowstone phenomenon where, Yellowstone keeps getting spin-offs, like the show. They're doing like a sequel, a prequel, an adjacent, town down the road is getting its own show. And so I think it's just like our desire for that fantasy. And I often ask, like, what is it about cowboys that we love to read about? And I still haven't 100%, gotten my arms around the answer. But I think somebody said recently that it's just like the cowboy's the ultimate fantasy. He's like truly a gentleman in the streets, but a freak in the sheets. He's master of his own universe, and yet he's content to like, live a small town life. And it's just kind of like all of these contradictions are resolved beautifully in a cowboy.
well, thinking about Wyatt specifically, you've continued to do this with the other brothers, but you started to lay groundwork for his story in
Yes.
Cash.
Yes.
So, and you've already kind of said you're not a full outline or anything like that, but how much of his story did you know when you were writing Cash, and how do you give the readers like enough information to crave it, but not so much that you don't have room to evolve?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's honestly, I have learned to do it by trial and error because I have, made the mistake of with one series, I set all three books happening simultaneously. So you're just seeing like action from book one happening in action book two and also in book three. And I quickly learned that is not the way to do it. It's a great way to write yourself into a corner. So I've just kind of learned over the years, like to drop subtle Easter eggs where okay, we know why it's trope, so we know that it's childhood friends to lovers. He's has the hots for Sally, who's around, who's in town for a little bit. So I could kind of drop hints and Cash for like, okay, they're gonna have this tension, they're gonna have this banter, they're gonna have this connection, but beyond that I'm gonna kind of like leave it intentionally vague for a lot of reasons, mostly because it's the perfect tease and also because it allows me a lot of room to like figure out what their actual story and plot's going to be. And then, in the back, I don't want to be too spoilery, but I do love to leave a good hook for the next book in the back of, Cash. And then again, you'll see it with Wyatt. And I think it's just, again, it's so fun and it's a great lead in. It gets you curious about, okay, like what is Sawyer's situation going to be, like what is his story going to be. And I think it just creates that like delicious sense of anticipation that as a reader myself I love. I'm like, when is the next one coming out? Like what happens, what does that mean when you kind of pick up on those little Easter eggs and you're like, is that an Easter egg? Did I just notice? Is that a thing? So it's really fun.
Yes, and I feel like you just do it the best. Like
Oh, thank you.
that Cash ending was so much fun. And then as you're reading Wyatt, you're like, okay, when am I going to see this? And it's kind of also fun to try to figure out like, where's this going to happen? How is it going to happen? And then you
Yes,
get there.
exactly. And so, I really love for me to have fun writing a book, I just have to have so much creative liberty. And so it's kind of like I intentionally, like in the epilogue and Wyatt, I don't tell you what time of year it is. Because I'm like, I honestly don't know in Sawyer, like what, what we're going to be looking at. So yeah, there is always that delicate balance, but it's just, and then I think you see in the back of Cash what happened with Wyatt, and then you read Wyatt and you can go back to Cash and kind of pick up on some fun things. So again, that's just like the beauty of small town romance, getting to know these characters, getting to know the community. It's just like really a special thing, and it gives you a sense of like being in the know.
Well, with Wyatt, he's got this reputation of kind of like flippant, happy-go-lucky playboy, but
Totally.
really, as you get to know him, it's more about trying to protect himself from entanglements and emotions because
Yes.
of his tragic past. So, like, how did you know that was his story? Why did you want that to be his
Oh,
story?
that is a really great question. And honestly, I didn't stumble upon it until I started to kind of think about who Wyatt is. And like, in a way, this series is very much about grief, but everybody deals with grief differently. So, Cash kind of gets grumpy, closes himself off, and just is like the strong, silent type who's taking care of everybody because he has been like from a young age, the man of the house, like the parent. And with Wyatt, I feel like, okay, since Cash took on that role, what is Wyatt's response to his parents' death? And I think, he comes off again very flippant, cowboy Casanova, always a good time, like the life of the party. But I'm like, there's deeper waters here. There's something going on here where it's like, okay, yes, he's a lot of fun, but he also like has this enormous well of hurt and he doesn't know what to do with it. So he kind of, has suppressed it and covered it up with this mask of being, I'm always going to make people laugh. And that's how I take care of my family. Also, like I always lighten the mood. I'm always going to, come in and be in a good mood, even when I actually don't feel that way. And so, in a way, like Cash carries a heavy burden, but in a way, so does Wyatt. Like they all feel this sense of responsibility to each other and their communities for not covering up the grief, but perhaps it's their way of thinking it's the right way to deal with it is, to kind of keep things light, keep things moving. We can't, dwell on these things. And I feel like Sally really stops Wyatt and calls him out on his bullshit, which is, one of the reasons why I think they're so perfect for each other. But yeah, Wyatt was, until I started writing him, I'm like, okay, okay, this like guy, the fun guy at the bar, it's a mask. And he actually really is super into Sally, and he really wants to just like settle down and be a dad and be a husband, but he's afraid to. Why is he afraid to? You just kind of start to do that excavation, and it's ends up being very satisfying. I'll say that much.
Well, on the other hand, we have Sally,
Yes.
and she's so warm and she's such like a boss at what she does, and she's just she's so great. But then there's this piece of her that is, when it comes to men and like romantic relationships, she's pretty self-conscious and she's kind of in
Yes.
her head thinking about it all the time. So why was it important for you to kind of tell that story of this amazing woman who is just so amazing, but then she does struggle with these negative personal
Yeah, totally.
thoughts?
Like somebody who's like super competent in one area of their life and very confident, right? Like she knows that she's a good veterinarian. She knows that she's good at what she does and she takes pride in that work. But I think it's also like, the flip side of that coin is, okay, she's been focused so much on that part of her life that it's really easy to let this other side, the social side, the romantic side kind of fall away, and she just, hasn't had time, and it also forces her to address some things about herself that maybe aren't super comfortable. And so, I definitely in my 20s was like a hot mess around guys, and so I just feel like I was never smooth. I was never, I couldn't easily talk to people. And I kind of wanted to capture that with Sally, where you could, be this really competent person in one area of your life and then in another just be a hot mess. And I think it just makes her relatable and like relatable and also human, right? Like you can't be, this perfect, competent, gorgeous, sexy, fun, cool girl, like, all the time. Like it's just impossible. And I'm kind of, maybe it's my way of pushing back against like our societal expectation of like women are going to be all the things all the time. You're going to be a boss babe, but you're also going to be like a babe at the bar. You're going to be great to your family, but you're also going to be spontaneous and fun. Like me kind of pushing back on this idea of like we're supposed to be competent in all areas. And I'm like, I haven't found that to be true in my own life. So I just loved, writing that vulnerable part of Sally where she's like, okay, I feel like I've got this part of my life figured out ish. This other part, I'm going to dig. I'm going to do some digging. I'm going to have a little fun and see what happens because I have to do something because I am just, dying of sexual frustration here.
Well, speaking of sexual frustration,
Yes, talk to me.
Wyatt and Sally, their chemistry is just so sizzling, and I think it has a lot to do with their childhood friendship and that just familiarity with one another,
Yes.
and then paired with like just that true love that they have both
That
like
true soulmate, right? That sense of being
yes.
soulmates. Like, yes, connected in a very spiritual way.
So I would love to hear your take on like why it is so important to tell these types of stories with physical intimacy, but especially for like women having pleasure and not feeling shame
Oh,
about that.
yeah, girl. Yeah, girl. So you are much younger than me, but growing up, I just remember always walking this tight line. It was like I very much grew up in like hookup culture.
Mm.
So it was like you had to be available and fun and cool and like, but not too cool. You didn't want to go too far. You didn't want to, you always felt like your reputation was on the line, but at the same time, the expectation was you're always going to be down to like have fun, but again, not too much fun. And so I think, in romance, one of the things that really I connected with off the bat, even as a teenager, like stealing my mom's Catherine Colter's, was just this idea of like sex positivity. Like, sex wasn't a thing that you withheld, that you played around. You like it just felt like you could do it and still be respected. You could not do it and still be respected. Like it was a great way for me to explore those themes because growing up, I never got a sex talk. I, never got there, and there's so much nuance to your sexual life. Like now that I'm like older, I'm like, oh my God, like there is no one size fits all. There is no, everybody has their own journey to get where they need to go. But I just really love this idea of romance centering female pleasure and just being very sex positive in that, you know, there's a million different ways to have sex, but also the heroine has sex and she is not punished for it. You know what I mean? I feel like think about every horror movie from the 80s and 90s, whoever is hooking up is the first girl to die. You know what I mean? It's like they get their what they had deserved. And so I think romance is a great way of like pushing back on that and being like, no, the girl who has the most orgasms wins. Like like that is, what we should be after. And now you have somebody like Billie Eilish, who I absolutely love, like coming out and be like, we should all be like jacking it more. And I'm like, this is so cool. We're able to talk about this like in public. Whereas even 10 years ago, when I first started writing, I feel like we were not necessarily having these conversations. And I think it's really special, really cool, and also really important to your point of like, having these stories. Sex is a part of life. And if we ignore it, then it becomes a thing of shame. But if we talk about it, we write about it, we, talk about our feelings, we think about it, it, it brings it out from the dark and it feels better. It just feels better.
Yeah, well, and this whole thought of like people, even if they're not doing it, like it's around. People are thinking
Yeah,
about it, like you said, talking about it. So like, let's
yeah.
not just like pretend it's not happening.
Exactly, because then it's like when it is happening to you, you feel like you're doing something wrong, or at least this is how I felt. You're doing something shameful. Like, if nobody's talking about it, then nobody's doing it. Why am I doing it? Why do I want it? And it's just kind of like, well, no, let's talk about it. And I often think so. I have two girls who are 5 and 2, and my like sexual education was very much informed by romance novels because again I got like the very typical sex talk in 6th grade and that was it. Nothing from my parents. My peers and I really didn't talk about it until college. um, but anyways, it's kind of like I think about if one of my girls picked up one of my books without me knowing when they're 16 years old, what would they learn from it? And I just want them to have like this come away with like this positive impression of sex. And also, we're going to talk about safe sex, we're going to talk about consent, we're going to talk about all of these things that are very important to like a positive sexual experience. um, but I wouldn't be mad at it, and I think all the time about what I would want my girls to know about it. And I'm gonna have the sex talk with them, but there's only so far I could take it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just think all the time about how important it is that we're talking about these things. And again, the world is still very uncomfortable with women talking about women's pleasure, but I think we keep doing it. And you know, you're welcome, world.
Yeehaw.
Right? Yeehaw. And I get a lot of DMs where it's like, oh, my husband thanks you. I was reading Wyatt last night, and I got to chapter whatever it was, and she's like, ooh, like I woke my husband up, and I'm like, let's go. And I love hearing because again, girl with the most orgasms wins. So I just love hearing these stories of, just connecting to that side of yourself, and that my cowboys brought you there. I think it's really cool.
Well, that's actually kind of something, not that specifically, but that's something I wanted to talk about was just like reader reactions to this series specifically, and I know like I am subscribed to your newsletter, which you know because I reply probably more than I should, and I'm always like,
No,
this
there
is
is no
so
such thing. I love hearing from you guys. Seriously, it's just my problem is like keeping up with everything. So if I don't respond, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I literally like Instagram hit it for me, or I just couldn't get to it. But I really love hearing from you. So
good.
seriously, don't
But
apologize.
um like with that in mind, it seems like this series kind of has changed your life a little bit.
Yeah, totally in a big way.
And I wanted to
Um,
know more about like what the reader response has been and like what that's been like for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what it was. I had my two girls, and I really took my foot off the gas pedal in my career, my writing career. I kept my foot in the door, but I was, very much like part-time, maybe three-quarters time, and that was intentional, because I had very, very young ones. But now this past year, my youngest turned two, and I'm like, I am just ready to be back in the world. I'm ready to like, for to see where I could take this thing. And so we intentionally, first of all, with like I was saying with this cowboy series, we intentionally set everything out. Like we're like, here's the five books, here's the tropes, here's the titles, here's the covers. We know what the release dates are. Like we're gonna really be intentional about it, all of these things. And then also I really focused on being part of the book world, creating relationships, being at signings, being available online, to your point about, like I love hearing from readers, and I've just never had the time or bandwidth to be that engaged on Instagram. And now it's like it's the highlight of my day to hear from readers. And so it's just kind of this, in a way, we have been planning for this cowboy series for a long time. We've been working really hard on our marketing, on our social media, and just trying to bring everything to the next level. And we had high hopes for cash. We had a lot of arc signups, which was really cool, but then you have to deliver. Like the arc has to be something memorable that people talk about. And it just blew me away, the response. Like just the way people were talking about it, how much cash still shows up on social media. It's just like, every day, like I wake up to a bajillion notifications, and it's the best feeling ever, because I feel like these books are very much books of my heart, and they very much are me. Like I put a lot of myself in these books. And so to know that people are connecting with them, and then not only connecting with them, but talking about them and telling their friends about them. And I love hearing, for instance, when people buddy read, and I'm like, it's so cool that you want to do this with your friend, and have this cool thing to talk about. So yes, it has just been life changing. With the Harbor Village series, which we had talked about earlier, I mean, I could not crack the top 100 on Amazon to save my life. Like we tried everything. We tried spending money on Facebook ads. We tried, just everything, and just nothing could really move the needle. And with Cash and Wyatt, it seems very organic. Like it has very much been a reader driven success story. And I'm just so grateful, because I feel like, I wrote the book, but we just kind of crossed our fingers, and hoped it was, there's so much magic that has to happen for a book to kind of do what Cash and Wyatt have done. It's got to be right book, right time, right release date. Right influencers have to be talking about it, and all of these things have to come together. And you just realize the further you get in your career, it's rare, and it's really special. And so I just feel so grateful, and just really excited, because these are such fun books to write, and I love living in this universe. So great question.
Well, I'm so glad that it's here too. And I can say one of my girlfriends, we're always giving each other recommendations. And I said, I know that you're gonna love Cash. I think that you should read it. I know you have a huge TBR. So to entice you, I'm going to send you this not safe for work link. And then you can decide. So she looked at the Cash artwork and she said, I'm starting that today. And she's obsessed.
There we go. And you know what's so funny? Like the gal who I commissioned to do that artwork, I had not written Cash yet. And so, but we knew, we're like, okay, he's gonna have a mustache, he's gonna ride it, it's gonna be in a barn. Literally, that was what I told the illustrator. She came back with that, and we were like, this is the cornerstone of our whole marketing campaign. Like it worked out beautifully. And this was the first time I'm working with this artist, and her character art is just so special. And I feel like it has become such a hit with readers. Again, it was kind of like I had been a fan of this gal's forever. I had been on her wait list forever. And she opened up at the same time I'm writing Cash. And we're like, it was just so serendipitous and wonderful. And I have to say now with Wyatt, there's also NSFW work for Wyatt, artwork for Wyatt. And the amount of requests and DMs and emails I get about this, like, you know, a little scene, I'm like, guys, I'm just blown away. Like it's been the best surprise ever. And I'm not selling it right now. I never thought I would be selling it, but maybe in the future, I don't know. But it's just been the artwork has been a huge fan favorite. And I mean it's what my favorite too. So I totally get it. Thank you for spreading the word about the barn scenes. We'll call them
Well,
that.
when something's great, you just have to share it.
That's exactly right. And you just kind of got to go. And so there's a question, will we be in love with Sawyer art? I have plans to do artwork for Sawyer. Absolutely. I feel like, at this point, it's tradition with every book that we do in the Lucky River Ranch series that we are going to, have that really, really fun art. I'll have it at signings. I'll be giving it away as swag in my signed paperback store. So it will be available, but we're still figuring that piece
Well,
out.
I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I did want to touch on that a little bit, which is like
Sure.
kind of, especially with a series like this, the maybe pressure, and it doesn't have to be negative, but that pressure to continuously deliver, and
Yeah.
then also like repeat things like this special edition. Now everyone wants to have a matching set and artwork.
Yes.
Everyone will want to have the same kind of artwork. So like, is
Exactly.
that different than what you've dealt with before, and
Oh,
how is it?
oh yes, Sky, that's such a great question. And I have wondered, like, for the past couple months, I'm like, I can't keep up with this. Like, I am very much like I have a wonderful team around me who I rely on for a lot of things, but like I am the one who has to sign the actual, sign the books, ship them, sign the special editions, order them, figure out how many we need, how many I could ship. There you go. Exactly. So it's been overwhelming in the best way. I think I am just learning, in this era of people really love their special editions, they love their paperbacks. There's a lot of authors who are crushing it, having like a TikTok paperback store or like and I don't have the bandwidth to do that right now, and so I'm just kind of like trying to find help locally here in Charlotte, and I found a couple really great gals, just to make it happen and just to give the readers what they want, because you guys have been so good to me that I want to be good to you. But ultimately, I have to spend most of my time writing, right? Your fact, like to deliver, especially on this new publishing schedule. I released 4 books in 2024, which is a lot for me. I'm a very slow writer. And so I could spend a year on one book easily between the draft and then the edits. Like I could tinker with it forever. But ultimately I have to have my butt in the chair on the computer writing words. That's my primary job. And so everything else kind of comes second, but I also recognize the importance of that stuff and like how much people love it, how much I love it. Like, and again, I came to this genre as a reader first, so I get it. People are, it's a compliment, it's the best compliment ever, that people want this fun cowboy swag from my pretend series, like our cowboy hats, or pretend small town. So yeah, the pressure is very real, but who said this? I think it was Billie Jean King, pressure is a privilege. So just trying to think of it that way. And it also helps, again, I'm in an office by myself, so if I can turn off my phone and I literally throw it across the room so I cannot pick it up, and I can get lost in the words, and it's just me, so I don't have an awareness of an audience, whereas when I'm on Instagram, there's a very big awareness of of what people want, what people are asking for, what turns people on, what turns people off. So yeah, the pressure's real, but it's also really awesome. So no complaints from me. I say that, and I'm about to like really start to go like draft into Sawyer, and I'll probably feel differently a weekend. But for right now, I'm feeling very grateful.
Well, I've already lamented the fact that I'm 2 hours away and I can't help you with all of that stuff, but I would if I could.
You are very, very kind. So you're in like the triangle, right?
Yeah, Raleigh.
Okay. Well, I feel like we need some book signings in our air, like some romance signings.
I feel
We
like
need that to
we, as
happen.
like North Carolina in general, We are very like abused in that. We don't get
We
anything. And
don't get any, even in the South, like the Southeast. So I'm going to Magic with the Bells in Orlando in March. And I feel like the Florida is Florida, like we need something like Georgia, Tennessee. I don't know. We just need something that I could drive to, to keep it local. And I just feel like there's also like so many amazing readers. There's a voracious readership here, that's just growing and growing. So hopefully somebody will have a North Carolina signing at some point in the near future. If anybody in here is an organizer, has an inkling that they want to organize a signing, I will be an author who goes to your North
let's
Carolina
do it.
signing.
Let's
Let's
do
do it.
it.
I'm in.
Well, I'm gonna let you go, but I did want to give you the chance to kind of just tell us maybe what is next. We know Sawyer's coming. What else is coming in the series, and what's next for you? Dates, if you want to throw them out there. Anything?
Sure. All great questions. So, yes, Sawyer's coming out April 24th. Um, Duke will be coming out in later this year, and then Rider, the last book in the series, will be coming out in early 2026. We have some exciting announcements coming about all of that, so stay tuned. In the meantime, yes, Wyatt will have a audiobook, and yes, it will be the same narrators as Cash, which I'm really excited about because I think they did such a great job. And then, yeah, next year or this year, because it's 2025 now, this year I'm going to be at Magic with the Bells, Wild and Windy Chicago, Rare London, which I'm so excited for. It's my first international signing. And then Violet Crown in Austin in September, which should be really fun for, my Texas boys. So busy year ahead, but all great things. And I feel like it's a dream. Like I've waited my whole career to have, a 2025 happen. And I'm really floating. So thank you, Sky, for being a part of it and just showing my book so much love. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it because it's truly a dream come true.
Well, I am so excited for you. You really just deserve it all. And
Oh, well, thank you.
well, I'm hoping the best for you in 2025 and maybe a repeat in January 26th.
Let's
We've
do
got a
it.
year.
I will pencil you in.
Maybe we'll do better in not doing it the day after New Year.
Perhaps not, although I have to say, like, it's kind of nice to get back into work mode a little bit and talk about books. Like, it's such a great excuse. Like, right now, my husband is texting me, like, my kids are in the bathtub, and I'm like, so sad to miss that. Like, oh, must go work.
It's
So, this is really such a
it
treat. I really
definitely
appreciate you.
it's definitely like a toe dip into the water. So it's been refreshing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's been refreshing, but I'm just like I said, I'm so thrilled with how everything's going. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying my Cowboys because I am too, and it's just truly the best feeling. So thank you guys, and thank you, Sky, for having me. Seriously.
Thank you so much. Good night and goodbye,
All right.
everyone. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good night. Happy New Year, guys.
Bye.